This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. Today I'm going to be sharing my top 15 bass tone tips that I wish I knew when I started playing bass. Let's do it. Tip number 15. Use thinner strings. Your first point of contact when making music is with your strings, and no doubt all of you know there are many different string styles, gauges and sizes. So what does this really mean to you? Contrary to popular belief, you can use lighter gauges in hard rock and metal. The late great Metallica bassist Cliff Burton was well known for using a lighter set of 35 to 90 on his bass. Thinner strings require less strength when fretting and they keep you playing for longer. They're also much easier to bend and have their own unique tonal quality. If you are new to the bass, consider a pack of lighter gauge strings. They'll also be less harsh on your fingertips. Heavy string gauges by comparison from 55 to 110 and above are extremely good at maintaining string tension in lower tunings. Tonally, they provide a big beefy sound. Medium gauges from 45 to 105 have no single-use application. They are the jack of all trades for strings. Not only are there different gauges, but many different types of wraps and cores. Unfortunately, you're going to have to go out there and expose yourself to as many different string types as you can and see what works well for you. If you're not sure where to begin, take a look at your favourite bassist and start from there. Tip number 14. Have you tried getting lessons? If you're struggling to understand how to write or play in your preferred genre, or maybe you need to work on your technique a little bit, consider using a bass teacher to develop your skills on a one-to-one basis. YouTube videos and blogs, they all cater to the lowest common denominator. Find yourself a teacher who will meet you at your level and push you out of your comfort zone. If you want to master a skill, seek out a master. If now isn't a good time for you to hire a bass teacher, then allow me to help you bridge that gap. Skillshare has a brilliant offer this summer up until September, where the first 1,000 people to click on the link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare rather than the 14-day trial. Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people, like music and bass lessons, illustration, design, productivity, photography, video, freelancing, and a whole lot more. They have a large selection of bass classes that fit your schedule and skill level. I've been improving my own music theory with the aptly titled Music Theory Survival Guide. I've also binge watched the entire workshop catalogue of Ali Abdaal, a very successful video maker and productivity master, which I highly recommend if you're looking to make positive changes to your creativity. If you guys are looking to explore and learn a new skill this summer, then come and join me and millions of other Skillshare members and start your 1-month free trial today. It will cost you absolutely nothing, so go ahead and have a 1-month free trial of Skillshare on me. Tip number 13. Play with dynamics. A wise old friend of mine used to say, music is the space between the notes. Generally speaking, all amplifiers sound good when they're cranked up loud, especially tube amplifiers. However, it's also good to be a sensitive player and explore dynamics. Give this a try. Turn your amplifier up as loud as you can stand it. Now play one note as hard as you can. Next up, try playing a second note as quietly as you can. Take your time to understand the dynamic range between these two notes and how it can fit into your play style. Tip number 12. Double track your bass. In the studio, if you want to create a bigger bass sound, use 2 separate tracks for bass. A DI or line out from your amplifier will capture the clarity of your signal and sound toppy. The second track should be a microphone placed near the cone on your cabinet. You can then blend in a very dry signal with a much fatter sound to provide you more presence. Some inexperienced sound engineers will throw a DI at you and won't bother miking up your cabinet. Do not let them do this. Tip number 11. Turn down your bass pot. When playing in a group, try turning down your bass pot as you get louder. You and your bandmates need to be aware of where you fall in the acoustic spectrum. Too much low end in the overall mix will clash and sound muddy or indistinct. Leave some lower frequencies for the drums and the bottom end of the guitar. Find and fit your pocket in the mix and sit there. Tip number 10. Don't cheap out on your cabinet. When you're out buying a new amplifier head and cabinet, Make sure you budget for a good quality cabinet as well. Far too many times bassists and guitarists go all out on a shiny new amplifier head and neglect their cabinet completely. So make sure you buy a good quality cabinet that will allow your head to live up to its full potential. Even a well-designed 1x15 cab can sound so much better than a bigger budgeted 4x10 cab. Don't neglect your cabinets. Tip number 9. Get your pedal board in order. Typically when building your own effects board, it's a good rule of thumb to build it in an order that won't negatively interfere with the other pedals. For example, dynamic effects should go first, like a compressor. Then heavy distortions, followed by lighter overdrives. Next, modulation like chorus, flanger, phaser and octave. And lastly, time-based effects like delay and reverb or a volume pedal. Use this as a starting place to get the most out of your pedals. But of course, it's your board, so experiment with whatever order works for your tone. Tip number 8. Have you tried a different scale length? Have you ever thought about trying a short scale bass? Well, now's a good time. The scale length on a bass measures from the nut all the way down to the bridge. Anything under 34 inches is considered short scale. The skeptics amongst you might wave these off as basses just for kids, but it's wholly unfair to dismiss them on this one point alone. In terms of physicality, they are a lot smaller, which does go on to help the lives of the little people, no, not leprechauns, a lot easier to play. Guitarists too, who I'm sure are flocking to our ranks these days, will love the familiarity to their 6-string counterparts. However, that's not all short scales are good for. Due to their shorter lengths, the basses have less tension than a standard 34-inch neck, which creates its very own distinct tone, with clear fundamentals and a lot less toppy harmonics. There are plenty of short scales on the market these days. They even have their own category in most bass shops, with basses like the Fender Mustang, Short Scale Music Man Stingray, Sketcher Banshee, Jackson Mini, and so on. Tip number 7. Play fewer notes. Bruce Lee was once quoted, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 notes once, but I fear the man who has practiced one note 10,000 times." Or something to that effect. The same can be said for bass playing. Play fewer notes, but play them the best you can. Tip number 6. Use your Plectrums tone. Plectrums are the cheapest part of your tone equation after your hands, but Plectrums have a profound effect on your tone. Softer materials such as celluloid produce a flatter tone than stiff nylon picks, which can enhance snap and clarity. Super thick picks are good for single note speed and articulation, but lose out in the general usability because of how awkward they are to play with. Similarly, a more pointed or rounded tip can respectively sound sharper or duller. Try out as many different Plectrums as you can. Find one that feels comfortable and sounds great. Tip number 5. Use 2 amplifiers. Just like our old friend Tim Commerford, if you're using overdrive or distortion and find yourself lacking articulation or a bottom end, try adding a second amplifier and leaving it clean. You can blend your dry sound with the distortion and fulfill the whole sonic spectrum. A much cheaper option to this is to find a distortion pedal which has a blend knob. Tip number 4. Improve your technique on an acoustic bass. When you play on an acoustic bass, all your flaws can clearly be heard in isolation. There's no lying to an acoustic bass. You can't hide behind your EQ or your effects pedals. Get an acoustic bass and take the time to practice your parts with careful precision. It will help train your ear to what a clean note should sound like, and help you with better fretting and picking when you go back to the electric. Tip number 3. Are you learning your parts? Yeah, I know it sounds corny, but be honest. Do you practice as much as you should do? Do you stumble or dread a specific part coming up after the chorus? Yes you do. Yes you do, and I know it. So rather than fluff your way through it, take your time to learn it slowly, properly, note by note, and get it right. Learn your set inside out to the point where it's second nature. When you get on stage, you won't even have to think about it. It will all be muscle memory. You don't want to be that bass player that keeps looking at his hands, turning his back on the audience and only making eye contact with the drummer. No, you don't. Do better. Tip number 2. Try playing a semitone lower or a different tuning. Depending on how you tune already, try dropping by 1 semitone. The strings have less tension so you can fret easier. Remember to check your string gauges to make sure they match the right tension. Sonically, you get a more subjective, deeper or meaner tone that works really well with slower tempos, which can be used as a musical effect. Lastly, if you have a singer that struggles to hit their high notes, try dropping down a semitone and cut them a bit of slack. And tip number 1, what if you tried being yourself? Alright, listen, I know, but I don't want to turn this into a Tony Robbins session or make it all woo-woo. Just hear me out, okay? It's all well and good you buying toys and gear to sound like your idols, but I guarantee you, if you ever had the chance to play on their bass rig, you would never, ever, ever sound like them. That's just a fact. We have a Geezer Butler, we have a Geddy Lee, we don't need more of them, we need you. We need you to show us what you got. Of course, we all have influences, that's how this journey starts. We compare ourselves to wanting to be like a certain bass player. But you should never try to be them. Play with as much gear as you can. Broaden your influences as wide as possible and practice until you can play your parts backwards. When it comes to the moment of you playing in front of an audience or recording a song, you should be dedicated to the music. And in that moment, brimming with confidence. Live like every note would be your last, and I guarantee you, this is a cast iron guarantee, your true tone will show itself. And there you have it. These are the bass tone tips that I wish I knew when I was 15 and just got started playing bass. If there are some tips you guys wish you knew when you were 16, bass related, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.